To everyone in the quiet suburb of Fairview, Dr. Jonathan Reed was the epitome of success. A brilliant cardiologist, devoted father of two, and loving husband to his college sweetheart, Emily, Jonathan lived in the kind of house people paused to admire: white picket fence, fresh-cut lawn, 2 cars in the driveway, and laughter from within. Emily Reed, a part-time graphic designer, prided herself on creating a warm home. She and Jonathan had met at the University of Michigan, where he studied pre-med and she pursued fine arts. From the outside, they were a power couple blending brains, beauty, and devotion. But beneath the well-manicured surface, cracks had begun to form. It started with phone calls Jonathan would step outside to take, whispers in the car, sudden late shifts, and unexplained conferences. Emily's intuition told her something wasn't right. She tried to reason: he's a doctor, he's stressed. But the lies began to slip. One evening, Emily found a receipt for a dinner in downtown Chicago on a night Jonathan claimed to be in Indianapolis for a medical conference. She confronted him. He smiled, calm as ever, and said it was for a colleague he treated. The lie was slick. But it didn't sit right. Desperate for clarity, Emily hired a private investigator. She hated herself for it, but the anxiety gnawed at her every moment. Within 2 weeks, the investigator confirmed her darkest fears. Jonathan was leading a double life. He had an apartment 40 miles away in a neighboring town, listed under a friend's name. He spent 2 to 3 nights a week there. And he wasn't alone. There was a woman, mid-30s, brunette, athletic, named Rachel Lawson. She was a pharmaceutical rep who'd been visiting Jonathan's hospital for years. She was also his mistress. And worse, she was pregnant. Emily was devastated. She felt paralyzed with grief and betrayal. For nearly a decade, she'd raised their children, supported Jonathan through med school and residency, and now, he had replaced her in secret. Instead of confronting him immediately, she waited. She documented everything. She kept the photos, the receipts, the text messages. She contacted a divorce attorney. But Emily wasn't just planning to leave. She was planning justice. On the evening of October 12, Jonathan returned home from a hospital shift. The kids were at Emily's mother's house. The house was quiet, dimly lit. Candlelight flickered on the dining table. Emily had made his favorite herbed salmon, garlic mashed potatoes, and red wine. Jonathan looked surprised but pleased. "What's the occasion?" he asked. "You," she said simply. "I thought it was time we talked." What followed was an eerily calm conversation. Emily confronted him, gently, showing him photos, messages, even Rachel's name. Jonathan froze. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed and said, "You deserve better. I didn't want to hurt you." Emily nodded, lips trembling. Then she said, "There's something else you should know." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small audio recorder. "I've been recording this. For the attorneys. For the court." Jonathan's expression changed. "Emily, come on." But Emily wasn't finished. "I want full custody. You'll pay support. You'll admit adultery. Or this goes public." That's when it happened. According to crime scene analysis and Emily's later testimony, Jonathan snapped. He lunged across the table, knocked over the candles, and reached for the recorder. A struggle ensued in the kitchen. Emily screamed. A knife was grabbed. It was never confirmed who held it first. But in the end, Jonathan Reed was stabbed. Once. Then again. And again. By the time police arrived, called by a panicked neighbor who heard the screaming, it was too late. Jonathan was dead on the kitchen floor. Emily was covered in blood, sobbing in shock, holding the knife. The community was stunned. Dr. Jonathan Reed, a beloved doctor, father, and friend, was dead. And his wife was responsible. But as the case unfolded, public sympathy began to shift. The defense painted Emily as a battered wife, not physically, but emotionally manipulated and mentally abused. They described the gaslighting, the affair, the second home, the unborn child with another woman. They introduced evidence of a man with a dangerous temper when exposed. Prosecutors argued premeditated murder. They claimed Emily set a trap. That the candlelight dinner was a staged ambush. That the knife was too conveniently placed. The trial lasted 6 weeks. In the end, the jury found Emily guilty of voluntary manslaughter, not murder. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison with eligibility for parole in 4. Rachel Lawson gave birth to a daughter 3 months after Jonathan's death. She moved to another state and has kept a low profile ever since. Emily was released on parole after serving 5 years. She now lives under a different name, has limited contact with the media, and works quietly as a community counselor for women in abusive relationships. Their 2 children, now teenagers, were raised primarily by Emily's sister and have chosen to remain private. The case of Dr. Jonathan Reed remains one of the most talked about crimes in Fairview's history. It's a tragic story of betrayal, secrets, emotional abuse, and the dark places people go when they feel cornered. Emily didn't claim to be a hero. She claimed to be human. And in her own haunting words during sentencing, she said, "I don't want anyone to excuse what I did. I want them to understand what pushed me there."